who just this past week arranged for one of his supporters to tell jokes about black people eating watermelon and Puerto Rico being an island of garbage. Right there on stage at Madison Square Garden. Do you think that's somebody who's going to look out for you? Maybe you're Muslim American or Jewish American, and you are heartbroken and furious about the ongoing bloodshed in the Middle East and worried about the rise of anti-Semitism. Why would you place your faith in somebody who instituted a so-called Muslim ban? Who sat down for pleasantries with Holocaust deniers? Who said that there were very fine people on both sides of a white supremacist rally? And if any of you have a dad or an uncle or a co-worker or a drinking buddy who says he's thinking about voting for Trump because he's tired of cancel culture, or because he's uncomfortable with Kamala's position on transgender issues, or because he just thinks that America needs a strong, tough leader who will get stuff done. You might want to ask them, with respect and with love, what evidence do we have that Donald Trump actually got stuff done? And since when exactly is Trump's trademark behavior, the boasting and the bullying and the selfishness and the cruelty, since when is that a sign of strength? That is not what real strength looks like, Milwaukee. It never has been. Real strength is about working hard and taking responsibility and telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. Real strength about helping people who need it and standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves. That's what we should want in our daughters and in our sons, and that's what I want to see in the President of the United States of America. And fortunately, in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and Tammy Baldwin, you have candidates to vote for in this election who demonstrate that kind of character, who know what real strength looks like, who will set a good example and do the right thing and lead this country better than they found it. So if you are still on the fence in this election, think about what really matters. Think about the values we were taught by our parents and our grandparents. Think about the kind of country we want to be. And understand that your vote really does count. Here in Wisconsin, a single precinct might be decided by 10 or 20 votes. And those votes could determine the fate of our republic, the world that our children and grandchildren will inherit. That is an awesome responsibility. But what an extraordinary privilege that is. To live in a democracy that gives each of us the chance to make a difference, gives each of us the chance to make our voices heard. So, together, let's seize that opportunity. Let's vote for Kamala Harris as the next President of the United States. Let's vote for Tim Walz as the next Vice President of the United States. Let's vote for Tammy Baldwin and this whole early, because we have to wrap up before the Packers-Lions game starts. So, cheeseheads, don't worry. I'm not trying to compete against that. And the Bears are also playing, so. Hey. Right now we're on the same team, people. I am here for a very important reason, and that is to ask you to vote for one of my favorite congresswomen, Gwen Moore, for your wonderful Senator, Tammy Baldwin, and for the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Now, if you have not voted yet, today is the last day of early voting in Milwaukee. You can still get it done before the game. I won't be offended if you leave right now. If you have an absentee ballot, do not put it in the mail at this point. Bring it to a drop box at any early voting site. And if you can't vote early, make a plan to vote on Election Day, November 5th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Just go to let me make sure I get this right, wisdems.org/vote. And that'll tell you where you can go. And remember to bring your photo ID. And then get your friends and your family to make a plan to vote too, because together, in 3 days, we have a chance to choose a new generation of leadership in this country and start building a better and stronger and more hopeful America. Now, I don't think it's any news to you that this election is going to be tight. It's going to be tight because a lot of Americans are still struggling. You know, as a country, sometimes I think we forget, we have been through a lot over these last few years. We had a historic pandemic that wreaked havoc on communities and businesses and families. The disruptions from the pandemic caused price hikes that put a strain on family budgets. And even before the pandemic, a lot of Americans felt that no matter how hard they worked, treading water was the best they could do. So I understand why people are looking to shake things up. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you. Because there is absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself. This is a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down that golden escalator 9 years ago. And we've seen it for over a decade now, this show of his. The late night tweets, all caps. The weird tangents and crazy conspiracy theories. The constant attempts to sell you stuff. Gold sneakers, a $100,000 watch, even a Trump Bible. He wants you to buy the Word of God, Donald Trump edition. He's got his name right there next to Matthew and Luke. Who does that? The point is, Donald Trump is not thinking about you. His entire campaign, just like his entire presidency, has always been based on him. It's about him, his status, his money, his ego, his grievances, his insecurities. He wants the middle class to pay the price for another huge tax cut that would mostly help him and his buddies. He doesn't care if he costs more women their reproductive freedom, because apparently he doesn't think that it's going to affect him. It won't make a difference in his life. But most of all, Donald Trump wants us to think that this country is hopelessly divided between us and them, between real Americans, quote unquote, who support him, of course, and outsiders who don't. Because he thinks that having America divided, having people angry and resentful, will increase his chances to get elected. And I'm here to tell you, Milwaukee, we do not need another 4 years of Trump's arrogance and incompetence and division. America's better than that. America's ready to turn the page. America's ready for a new story, a better story. We are ready for a president, Kamala Harris. And the good news is Kamala Harris is ready for the job. This is a leader who has spent her life fighting on behalf of people who need a champion. Kamala was raised by a middle-class family, mostly by a single mom. She knows what it's like to have to scrap and save to make ends meet. She was in college. She worked at McDonald's to help put herself through school. She didn't pretend to work at McDonald's when it was closed. Her mom was I guess 5 feet tall, little brown woman with an accent, and you can imagine that she wasn't always given her due. But her mom taught Kamala and her sister to not only stand up for herself, but also stand up for injustice. And that's exactly what Kamala has been doing her entire career. As a prosecutor, Kamala stood up for children who had been victims of sexual abuse. As Attorney General of the state of California, she fought the big banks and for-profit colleges, securing billions of dollars for people that had been scammed. And after the mortgage crisis, Kamala pushed me and my administration hard to make sure that homeowners got a fair settlement. So again and again, Kamala has fought for people who needed a voice, who needed a champion, and she delivered on their behalf. That's who Kamala is. And you may not agree with every decision she makes, but I can promise you, if you elect her, she will see you and hear you, and she will have your back every single day, and she will work hard on behalf of all Americans. And by the way, she'll have an outstanding partner in Governor Tim Walz. I love that dude. He is a veteran. He's a teacher. He's a coach. He was a great governor. Turns out he can even take a vintage truck apart and put it back together again. You think Donald Trump can do that? Do you think Donald Trump has ever changed a tire in his life? If he gets a flat tire, he calls his chauffeur, Jeeves. Jeeves, change that tire. I don't know if his chauffeur is actually named Jeeves, but I like to think it's Jeeves. The point is, if you elect Kamala and Tim, they know something about your life because it's been their life. They'll be focused not on their problems, they'll be focused on yours. And that's why, for so many of us, the choice in this election seems like it should be so clear. I mean, on the one hand, you've got a former president whose time in office was characterized by so much chaos and scandal that he was impeached not once, but twice. Twice. On the other hand, you've got somebody who cares about working people and who has served with distinction in every office that she has ever held. But here's the thing, Milwaukee. we live in a big country. Wisconsin's a big state. People have a lot of different points of view. There are voters out there who are just as passionate about Trump as we are about Kamala. Just like the last two elections, this one is going to be determined by a handful of people who are genuinely torn about who to vote for or are debating whether to vote at all. Which is why, if y'all don't mind, I want to speak directly to those who may be watching, maybe listening, friends of yours, maybe a few of you who are still here, who are still undecided. Those of you those of you who see Donald Trump's flaws but don't feel like you know Kamala well enough. Or those of you who are concerned about democracy but are more concerned about making ends meet. Or those of you who understand the difference between the two candidates but don't think this election will actually make a difference in your life. Now, when I talk to folks that are genuinely undecided, the first thing they'll say is that they want a president who will improve the economy. And that makes sense. Even though wages are steadily growing, unemployment is relatively low, inflation is finally slowing, but the price of everything from healthcare to housing to groceries is still too high. The question I ask them, the question I think we all have to ask ourselves is, who's really going to do something about it? Now, in talking to people, I've realized, so I want to address this. It turns out one of the reasons people think Donald Trump will improve the economy is because they watched The Apprentice. I'm serious. No. I'm not kidding. I've heard this, people say this. I happened to miss that show when it was running, but it was really popular. So I want everybody to be clear. That was not reality. That was a reality show. The truth is, Donald Trump was given $400 million by his daddy. That's how he got rich. And somehow his company still managed to declare bankruptcy 6 times. So let's put that aside for a second. When it comes to actual policy, Donald Trump has offered up 2 ideas. The first is, once again, he wants to give another massive tax cut to billionaires and big corporations. Now, some people might hear that and they say to themselves, well, I remember the economy being pretty